shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul. Watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated. Misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded. Watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other. Watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon. Desensitized in our lust for attention. Democratized by our voyeur obsessions. Watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection. Don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in at spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. As once again we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra, battle our way past the wild animals, sidestep Bigfoot, and enter Uncle Jimbo's cabin, stoke the fire, heat this place up, and broadcast to you live on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you are on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. We often get asked why. Well, that's because we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, ufological, spiritual, and so much more. Hey, if you like our theme music, you can find out more about the guitar god himself on spacedoutradio.com. Former Guns N' Roses lead guitarist Ron "Bumblefoot" THAL is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can find his album, Little Brother Is Watching, by clicking on our website. If you're a social media junkie like I am, you can follow me on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, you can subscribe to it. It's where we put our archives, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And our website, which has a brand new look coming right up, is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we'd love to send a shout-out to those of you tuning in on the SHR Media Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Forest Moon Paranormal, and the SOR Space Travelers online at Paranormal Forum as well. If you're a fan of Spaced Out Radio, coming real soon as our website is updated, is the Spaced Out Radio's Space Travelers membership, where for only $5 a month, yeah, just $5, you can win prizes, take part in private group interviews, have a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The official newspaper of this show is the New Agora newspaper, and the official ghost hunting app of Spaced Out Radio is the iTunes app, Spirit Storybox. We round out the week on Spaced Out Radio discussing a little bit of paranormal. And really, I love where tonight's show is going to go. Our guest tonight is Don Allison, who is a journalist and an experiencer, much like myself. And you see, there's always something about journalists having experiences that gets me quite excited. Why, you ask? Well, it's simple. You see, most journalists are fickle people. They're cranky. Sometimes they're even narrow-minded. Doesn't matter what the topic is, most journalists act like jaded, miserable people. To this day, I don't know why, but there are so many whiny sorts of them who want to cover what they call real news, but end up writing or broadcasting about the same political stories or the same sports stories, whatever it is, and they get upset about that. It's really the whole humanity of it all. Don't really get it, but journalism is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be about being creative. It's supposed to be telling stories that people discuss on a daily basis about their happenings. On a serious note, when it comes to the alternative stories, like the paranormal or UFOs, the minute one of those calls comes into a newsroom about one of those topics, most journalists don't even give it the time of day. It's sad, really. It's against what they are supposed to do. There are a few basic questions, then they find a way to get off the phone quickly. Don Allison is an award-winning journalist who, as I stated above, is also a paranormal experiencer as well. He's had his own sightings that sent him on a quest to find out what's going on behind the veil of life after life. His website is imetaghost.com. So tonight we're going to mix in some journalism talk and how it could really include the alternatives like ghosts. Don Allison, welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
Just fine. Thanks for having me on tonight.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show with us because I don't get a lot of journalists on this show, Don. And when I do, it kind of brings a little bit of a smile to my face because there are only questions that you can ask so much that a journalist will understand. And I look forward to this conversation because of that. When it comes to journalism and UFOs or aliens or Bigfoot or, in your case, the paranormal, there always seems to be that snide little comment or that eye roll that other fellow journalists do. Do you like combining the two topics of the alternative media with what you do on a daily basis?
I really do, and I'll have to confess that I fell pretty squarely into that group of rather skeptical, or if snide is the word. I really did not believe in the paranormal until I had some things happen that just caught my attention.
I want to get into the journalism side a little bit later in the show, but let's learn about you here. A lot of people who start reporting on this, like myself or other people in this field, they have their own experiences like you have had that really make a dent or a change in one's path. What happened to you that made you decide that you needed to look into the paranormal a little bit more seriously?
Well, as far as research, I had some things happening at a historic house that my wife and I are restoring. And I'll have to confess that I just kind of pushed it away, like, no, this isn't happening, just go away, I don't want this. And it took me a good probably 3 to 4 years to decide to actually tackle this as a topic to write about.
What happened? What were you seeing?
Well, I haven't really seen a lot, but I have experienced a lot. And I'll kind of set the stage. This kind of planted a seed that I really didn't recognize at the time, but my own grandmother, a Southern Baptist minister's wife, mind you, used to tell me about living in a haunted house in Louisiana. She talked about waking up and seeing a man standing at the end of their bed, watching them sleep. She said he was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and he just vanished when he realized she was looking at her, or at him. She talked about having the covers pulled off the bed as she and my grandpa slept. I remember her telling me about having someone sit on the bed beside her, leaving an impression, but there was nobody there to be seen, but she could see and feel the weight of a body. And I'll confess, I used to think that, well, she's not the type who would try to pull the wool over my eyes or make something up. I believe she experienced something, but what I wanted to say is, Grandma, you should have maybe laid off those spicy Cajun meals before going to bed. But I later realized that, yeah, she probably experienced exactly what she saw. My wife and I had bought a house, dates to the 1830s. It was in very rough shape. We decided to tackle it. Well, we're outside shortly after we'd acquired it, And a fellow who had lived here for like 24 years before moving out, before we bought it, stopped by. And he walks up and he says, "You know, this house is haunted." And my first reaction, he seemed like a nice man. I bit my tongue. My first reaction was, okay, this explains the half-empty booze bottles we're finding hidden around the house. But I didn't say that. We let him go, and he told about some experiences. Didn't think much of it, but later on I experienced some of the same things that he experienced. The most notable one, and it has happened more than once, it happened more than once to him. I was working in the living room. We didn't have power to the house. We didn't trust the old electric lines and so forth. So I'm working, and I heard what sounded like light, like a child's footsteps or a young woman's footsteps start in our south bedroom, run across the room, run across the middle bedroom right above me, run across the hall into the north bedroom, and the door slammed. Now, there are two things about this that were really strange. One, the middle bedroom floor was so water damaged that even a child would have fallen through, and the door to the north bedroom was stuck almost fully shut. You could not open it or close it. We had to work with it later on. But those sounds were just clear as could be. I grabbed a flashlight, ran upstairs, shined my light around. The door hadn't moved. There were no footprints in the dust. I know it wasn't an animal. If it had been, I would have found the animal when I got up there. It definitely was a person. Sounded like, really, to me, a young barefoot girl's footsteps, rather. That got my attention.
I bet. And you know what's funny is your story, as I'm listening to this, I'm actually getting goosebumps because I had the exact same thing happen to me at my house, where I lived in a duplex. My ex-wife and I lived in a duplex with our daughters, and our best friends happened to rent the other side. And we thought it was very convenient because we would, exchange babysitting, and it was, you live beside your best friends. How good could life be? And we had a great time with that. Their side had nothing happen. Our side, we had all our teaspoons go missing. We had our drinking glasses go missing. We would clean up my daughter's room, and she was only a year and a half, 2 years old, 3 years old at this time. We would clean up her bedroom. And, because we had bedroom cleanup night before we would go to bed, and then wake up in the morning, and her room is just destroyed. And she would always say in her soft little child voice, "It's not me, Daddy. I didn't do it. I didn't do it." And she would be upset about that. And here you're thinking as a parent, well, we just spent an hour cleaning the room, and now there's crayons on the wall, or something along those lines. But when we started thinking that the house was haunted, that's when the things started happening. We actually had a situation where I had seen the little girl, my ex-wife had seen the little girl, and we would have the times where our daughter's bedroom door was very, very creaky, and just like you, we would hear that creaky door open, the pitter-patter of little feet running down the hall, and this little girl or little child would love to jump on our bed. So then you'd hear the springs in our bed starting to go up and down, up and down. And the funny part about it is there would be no kids in the house. So I know exactly the picture you're painting right now, and it just sent shivers down my spine when you said it.
And that's just one of many occurrences. And what you said about things moving, that's another thing that has happened here still, will sometimes happen now that we're living in the house. One that really got my attention, the first one was I was working on one of the window frames upstairs, and it was, again, before we had power in the house. It was starting to get dark, and I was using a hammer and chisel. I laid the hammer and chisel on the top of the lower window frame, left for the evening, came back the next day after work. Nobody would have been in the house. I went to resume work on the window frame, and the chisel was gone. And I'm thinking, what in the world? Everything else is there, but the chisel is gone.
Right.
I later found the chisel months later in the middle bedroom that had the bad floor that I talked about earlier, behind a pile of items that had been stacked there long before we bought the house. There was probably dust a half-inch thick on and around all that, no footprints, no markings. I don't know how that chisel could have gotten there by, a natural occurrence as we understand, the laws of nature. Just mind-blowing. The one that really, really got me, a friend of mine experienced this, got to see it with me, but we were redoing the ceiling in the upstairs bedroom after we had replaced the floor, and as it turns out, this room was off square by about 6 inches from front to back. And as we were doing drywall on the ceiling, that was making things very difficult. Well, this was a Saturday. We were done for the evening. I had a carpenter square and a tape measure, and I looked at my friend with one of these in each hand. I said, well, obviously they didn't have these when they built this house. I laid them on the tray of one of the step ladders, and we left. We came back late the next morning, a Sunday morning. The T-square and the tape measure were not on the ladder square. They were laying neatly laid smack in the middle of the north bedroom, which was an 1869 addition to the house and was much more square and much more modern construction, was involved. That played with my head. I'm glad I had a witness for that one. We just shook our heads and laughed.
Don, I want to ask you this. Before you started having your own personal experiences, were you a believer in the paranormal? Was this something that was new to you, or did you just kind of write it off like half the population out there is, oh, it's just boards creaking because the building is old, or, what, I didn't really see what I thought I saw. That was my imagination.
I was very much of that mindset. Even my own grandmother, I thought, she just was dreaming or something happened, that gave her the impression she had her experiences. No, I was that snide newspaper guy taking the call, in the newsroom.
Do you regret that now, looking back on it?
Yes, I do. I really do. It's just, I guess we're so taught, not just as journalists, but I guess, in school, not that I put down science in any way. I respect science, and I think proper research would actually reveal, hopefully in my lifetime, will reveal what's really going on, at least some more insight into it. But yeah, I wish I would have been open at an earlier age. I think there's a lot I could have learned.
So how old were you when these experiences started?
Oh, in my early 50s.
Oh, goodness. And you had never had any paranormal activity or caught on to it before this happened?
I have had some odd experiences that I could not explain. One pertains to my grandmother. This would have been, this was many years ago. I would have been in my early 20s at the time. I think I was still in college, still living at my parents' home. But my grandmother, the one who shared her paranormal experiences, was on the operating table with a intestinal tumor. They suspected cancer, very serious surgery. Well, I'm sitting on the bed at my folks, and I looked to see what time it was, and my watch had stopped. Well, the thing about this watch is it was a gift from my grandmother. This was the old wind-up style. So I checked. The watch is wound. The hands moved, but it would not run. Maybe about 10 minutes later, it started running again. I found out later that at the very time that the watch showed when it stopped, my grandmother's heart had stopped on the operating table. She was revived. She did survive and was with us for decades more. But that always stuck in my mind, that, what the odds of that being a coincidence are pretty wild, really.
Yeah, I know the feeling. When my mom's mother passed away, we have one of those old clocks that was hers at the same time, and to this day, it sits in my mother's house. It's never been rewound to get going again. My mother keeps it because it's the exact same time as when my grandmother passed away. So I know exactly what you're talking about in regards to that. It's kind of weird how family heirlooms like that seem to have that energy and that ability to have a heartfelt, no pun intended, connection to the person who passes away, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was so strange. And this watch that I was referring to, this ran for many years afterwards with no problems. So there again, the odds of that being a coincidence are just incredible.
So when you started to open up and you started to see these things, what was the real eye-opener for you?
I think when I began to realize there was intelligence behind what was happening, the particular instance that really opened my eyes, we had a lot happen. I guess I'll set the stage for this. We had a lot happen with electronics. I had purchased like a used radio CD player early on in our restoration process, thinking the sawdust and so forth would ruin it. Why waste a lot of money in one? And this one would just, the radio stations would change. It was a digital tuner. The CD would stop playing. It would come on by itself, off by itself, change radio stations by itself. I thought it was defective. I pitched it and bought a brand new one, which oddly enough would come on by itself, turn off by itself, change stations by itself. But I'm working one night, again, before we had power in the house. It's after dark. I had a generator running outside, running a table saw, doing floorboards, actually. And for some reason, when loud, raucous rock songs would come on is when the radio would tend to shut off or change stations. This one night I had a classic rock station on, and finally the third time that a loud song came on and the radio turned off, I just got frustrated, and this was totally out of character for me. I said out loud, "Look, I like this music. Don't turn off my music. Leave the radio alone." Turned it back on a little bit later, and the exact song was Elton John, "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting" came on. A little ways into the song, the generator outside turned off. And I'm standing in the dark, and I just started shaking my head and laughing. Went out, the generator was fine, had plenty of gas. It had never done anything like that before. It started right up when I went out, and I felt like I was being toyed with or mocked a little bit.
That had to be unsettling for you, though, because I think even as an adult and someone who is of mature in their thinking, much like you are, you had to be a little bit shaken up by that or unsettled in regards to this is too weird of a coincidence. Because once your mind all of a sudden grabs a hold of something, the imagination can make anything happen.
It's kind of funny, but I've never really been frightened by these, maybe on occasion startled by things, but my curiosity has always been the overwhelming thing, and I'm lucky that my wife has the same outlook. I'm just more fascinated than frightened or unsettled. And I don't know, I guess that's just my nature.
Did it set you off on a real path of what you needed to do, or did it take some time for you to build up to the fact that you needed to start writing about this or taking notes about this?
It took a long time. It did lead me to start researching, to get online, to read, to watch some of the, ghost investigation shows on television. But, and maybe this might help explain my mindset, but the very first thing that I had happen at the house that I thought may have been paranormal was the very first project I tackled. The front porch was so rotted that they had laid industrial skids across to lead to the main front door. So I tore that part of the porch off and put up a solid temporary porch. Easy project. It took one evening after work to do. And as I was finished, I went to leave, and we have a double mahogany, very solid door, but on very smooth working hinges, still has the antique, brass hardware. It's a wonderful door, and it closes and opens very easily. I went to pull the door shut, and it was yanked backward out of my hand. And I thought, what? And I'm looking, there's nothing there. It opened and closed easily, nothing caught it, nothing in the way. It kind of played with my head, but I leave. I come back after work the next day, and they're standing upright on the temporary porch that I had just created was a pine cone. And we did at that time have a pine tree with pine cones in the yard, but it was far enough away. There's no way that pine cone could have fallen, and the odds of it landing and carefully balancing upright were there again. Just it couldn't have been chance. And I started looking into, okay, what's the meaning of a pine cone? And of course, the spiritualism, the third eye, that whole realm, and that really got my mind kind of going. What's behind this? And then things just kept escalating from there.
It's one of those things where I noticed with my own personal experiences, Don, that once that ball got rolling, it's amazing how fast it started rolling with the experiences coming in, where it almost got to the point of a daily basis. Was that happening with you as well?
Very much so, especially early on, right after that point. The experiences with the radio especially were just plain weird. Whatever seemed to be changing the radio stations tended to go towards sports. Cleveland Indians radio would often come on during baseball season. Well, I'm a Detroit Tiger fan, so I found that a little bit irritating. One time, my wife and I were working outside the house, and we had a radio playing, and no matter what station we put it on, classic rock or country, it kept switching to a Bowling Green State University men's basketball game. This was just plain strange. We would just try stations randomly, and it kept going back. We just gave up and left it on the game station. I don't know how you explain that. It's just like, toying with us, kind of saying, hey, I'm here.
I know the feeling all too well, because in my old house, we had cats. And for some reason, we would be sitting at our dinner table, maybe eating dinner or doing a puzzle with my daughter or something along those lines, or drawing, and we'd notice the cats batting at things in the air, and there was nothing there. There was just nothing there, and you're watching them, and the cats obviously are seeing something, and they're apparently a creature who sees what's on the other side, but we saw nothing. On that note, Don, we are going to hop out for our first break of the night. Our guest tonight, Don Allison. He is a journalist and an author. His website is imetaghost.com. More paranormal talk right after this.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Hi there. This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for. So join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost?
Look no further than Spaced Out Radio.
SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click on to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on radio
or our website, including social media.
From commercial spots to banners, we have it all.
Check out our competitive pricing today.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the Euphor Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Want to connect with us online? Find us on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, on Twitter, @Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. All right, space travelers, here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. And welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, on Paranormal Forum, on the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, or on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Forest Moon Paranormal, or our flagship SOR Space Travelers chat room, which you can sign up for free. Saturday and Sunday night, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson is back in the hot seat here in Spaced Out Weekend. He takes over the cabin while I head out into the wilderness. I try and find my zen, my chi, and maybe a good Wi-Fi signal from one of the caves that I will warm up in the mountains as I wander off into the wilderness to take a break for a couple of days before I'm back in the hot seat in Uncle Jimbo's cabin on Monday night. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store our archives, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking paranormal with Don Allison. He's a journalist and a writer. His website is imetaghost.com, where he explains his own personal experiences. Don, welcome back to the show.
Yes, I'm glad to be here.
Now, Don, you're in Ohio, and I have to tell you this, my friend. I cannot believe, being way over here in British Columbia, how much I hear coming out of Ohio. Whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's the paranormal, whether it's cryptid creatures like the frogmen, whether it's the weird and the strange that seem to surround the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which I believe is south of you, it's just weird how much stuff is happening in Ohio these days. What makes you think that Ohio is the home to such weird and strange occurrences?
I don't really know what it's attributed to. I know there's some unique things here. The serpent mounds, of course, in southeast Ohio are very unique, and I'd highly recommend anyone interested in anything spiritual to check those out. I'm in what's called the old Great Black Swamp. There's a very heavy Native American presence here. We find things around our property all the time. Some going back to like 10,000 BC. It can just be amazing. But I don't know what it is, but I've heard others from outside the area say the same thing.
It's just very strange because for some reason I normally don't check into where people live. But for the past couple of months, I have really noticed that a lot of my guests, believe it or not, have been from Ohio. And it just makes me scratch my head of what truly is happening in your state, because it seems to be in the Ohio-Pennsylvania region more so than anywhere else across the United States. Have you ever thought about that?
I never really did until probably within about the last 3 or 4 months. I've done some other radio appearances, and that's been brought up to me before, and I guess I never really thought about it. But my own experiences have been primarily here and in Pennsylvania, especially Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That is really where I had the most mind-blowing of my experiences.
And we're going to get into that here in just a little bit when it comes to it. But before we get into that, I want to get into the journalistic side of things, because we're getting closer to disclosure. And I'm not trying to turn this into a whole UFO debate, because that's not really what tonight is about. But I want to talk about the journalistic side of these types of stories, whether it's ufological, whether it's paranormal. Why do you think journalists, and you've been a journalist a long time, are so fickle about covering these topics? Because when we do, especially if it's on radio or television, there's always the Twilight Zone music or the X-Files music, and then once the story is complete, there's always the snide comment made by the reporter that kind of throws the story right down the tubes like it's just filler. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I really have. I think part of it is the journalistic, and I'm just trying to think of the right word here, I guess, not really creed, but mindset, where, what's the old saying go? If your mother says that she loves you, check it out. And you really do need to be very skeptical about things as a journalist. There's a lot of people out there trying to quite frankly, feed you a big line of BS to get their marketing line. Politicians, it can be amazing just how they will twist things to get their message across, ignore your questions. And I think you do have to have that mindset to do your job properly. But also that doesn't mean that you can't be open-minded. And it's kind of like, and I guess part of my thought going into writing the book was, well, if you haven't seen it, you can't judge it. If you haven't experienced, you can't judge it. And I think a lot of times, be it journalists, be it just people in an audience when you're giving a talk, will make that judgment that they know that can't be true, period. And it's too bad, but there again, to circle back to your original question, yeah, that's very much a part of how journalists view things.
And I remember working on the radio side of things, where sitting in our newsroom, we would get people calling up saying they're seeing strange lights up in the sky, and we'd be like, "Oh, where are you seeing them? What do they look like? Are you sure it's not an airplane?" And then there's always the question, have you been drinking tonight? Have you been on any kind of narcotics? Because we're cynical that way. And the one thing that I learned about being a journalist is if it isn't part of the five senses, you're really not believing what's happening, because let's face it, when you're a journalist, you do have to vet absolutely every phone call that comes in. But on the flip side, it becomes almost, I don't even know the word for it, it almost becomes way too egotistical on the journalist side to try and think that there is the plausibility and possibility that people are having these troubles. And for a lot of these people who actually call the newsroom, they don't know where to turn, because maybe they don't know anybody in paranormal groups or UFO sides. Maybe they haven't looked on the internet, or they're just so startled that they make the phone call to the newsroom and nothing happens.
And I think there is a lot to that, and you've probably experienced that. I've had callers that when they first call in, you don't know what's up. Their neighbors are out to get them, or, gee, everybody in my apartment complex, has it out for me. And usually these become repeat callers, and you recognize it. But the first time or two around, you do get these people who just obviously have mental issues. One woman, someone was poisoning all the songbirds, outside of her duplex, and you do kind of get that, and you sometimes maybe have a knee-jerk reaction towards, oh, gee, another one of these calls. If someone's seeing lights in the sky. I have fielded a lights in the sky call before, and it turns out that our 911 dispatchers received several similar calls at that same time, and I don't know that it ever was explained. We did, report that, they received these calls and so forth, and no one could account for it. It wasn't a big story, but we did run the story.
The reason why The reason why I ask is we've been doing a lot this month on Spaced Out Radio dealing with disclosure, and we are one of the media outlets that is helping advertise the Alien Cosmic Expo up in Brantford, Ontario on the 24th through the 26th, just next week. And one of the things that keeps popping up is with Hillary Clinton and her stating that John Podesta, in order to get him to run her campaign, made her promise about having to discuss disclosure and what is actually happening up at Area 51 in regards to UFO activity or what we may be hiding technologically. And the one thing that I have found very strange about this, and we've been hammering it all month and pretty much since it happened, is the fact that this originally started on February 13th, 2015, when John Podesta left the White House to join Hillary's Democratic nomination. And he sent out a very ominous tweet that really nobody but the Huffington Post was covering. Do you think the media, when it comes to disclosure on UFOs, and I know I'm stepping away from the original topic, but I'm looking at your journalistic side here, but do you think that we dropped the ball as journalists in regards to what could be the biggest story in mankind's history next to Christ himself coming back for a second resurrection?
Well, I do think the mainstream media has dropped the ball on this. I am not one who I have not researched, into UFOs. I don't know a lot about that particular topic, but I do know that, yes, the government obviously has been hiding things. I mean, there's no doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, they have been, if you read into it at all through the years. And, yeah, whatever it is that they're hiding, I think, is of great import, be it technology, be it, are we visited? When I was a college student, I was fortunate to study under a gentleman by the name of Dr. Delsem. I can't remember his first name. He was a very noted astronomer. He was involved in the NASA project to study Halley's Comet. This was before the Halley's Comet, last return. He was a firm believer that there's got to be life on other planets in the solar system just from the sheer numbers and the sheer unlimited size of the solar system. And, here's one of the most recognized, honored minds in astronomy at that time saying this. That to me lends a lot of weight to the credence that there's something out there.
And I guess on the journalistic side, where I'm trying to go with this and get your opinion on this, Don, is the fact that here it's been talked about for pretty much a year and a quarter. It's been out in the public, but it's only been rather the last 5-6 weeks where the mainstream media has actually picked up on the fact that Hillary isn't dropping this UFO talk, where normally politicians don't talk about that type of subject. It's taboo. The media doesn't talk about that subject. It's taboo. And all of a sudden the media, whether they like it or not, is being dragged into this X-Files type story, and they know nothing about it. And yet when you look at the significance of what this could have in the history of the world, not just the United States, but the world, because it's going to affect every person on this planet, it still makes me scratch my head thinking, how the hell do you drop a story like that? How do you not take that story seriously when you have potentially the most powerful person in the free world talking UFOs and what they're going to discuss, and you're not reporting on it? You're not looking for facts on it. You're throwing it in the garbage, much like you would a last-place team when you're going into the playoffs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, I think that the journalists, like people in general, tend to be a bit lazy. I mean, here's a totally different topic that all of a sudden is going to be covered correctly, to be covered in depth. It's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of in-depth study, a lot of research. And, yeah, quite frankly, I don't think a lot of times news outlets know how to handle it and don't really seem prepared to do the work necessary to handle it. And I think that's true of other topics as well.
Well, let me throw a different side at you on this, because you've been a journalist a long, long time. There is a group of people out there in the alternative areas of study, whether it's UFOs, whether it's government conspiracy, paranormal, who believe that the media is infiltrated in the United States, who believe that that's the reason why stories like Hillary's haven't received mainstream press, is because they are told not to. Have you ever worked in a newsroom that has told you what to cover and what not?
No, I never have. I have been saying for probably at least 20 years now that the corporate takeover of networks, of news outlets, and so forth will have and is having a chilling effect on the news media. And I think, especially, you have corporate interests, running newsrooms, and I think this does happen. I've been fortunate to work for family-owned newspapers where, that did not happen. But I don't know so much that it's maybe a conspiracy thing as just corporate control, just like in any other business, the talking points, keep on message, so forth and so on. I think that is more of a factor than anything.
But do you see their point when you have people out there not seeing stories like this being covered, where they automatically start to think that maybe Big Brother is watching, compared to a journalist's note, which is supposed to be straight down the middle, which is supposed to be unbiased, yet in certain portions of the media we see them taking sides, whether it's Democratic, whether it's Republican, whereas a journalist's job is supposed to be neither. You're supposed to be right down the middle. Do you see where people are getting a little bit antagonistic in regards to their attitude towards the media?
Oh, very much so. Quite frankly, I find myself feeling that way at times, about some media outlets and some sources. And, yeah, you tend to wonder why. I mean, obviously when it's happening, like, yes, I I do think part of the UFO coverage is maybe people being afraid of being ridiculed, for the coverage, for even being open about it. And that's unfortunate. And maybe sometimes it takes courage to do what's right as a journalist.
How do we improve that then, in your mind? You've been doing this well over 2 decades, almost 3 decades here. Is there a way to get that trust between journalists and the public back again, or is it just too far gone at this point with the way social media is, that trust level that has been broken, or so it seems, just will not recover?
That's a very good question. I do have some fears for the future of the mass media. Unfortunately, social media, in my mind, just allows people to just mine Facebook or Twitter or what have you to get their information there from unvetted sources. And part of that is, I think, the mainstream media in many cases not responding to that journalistic call to be fair, to be unbiased. You see, the talking heads on TV taking sides. Instead of presenting what is the news, they say what they think about the news. I think that has its place, but I think it should be a much smaller role than what it is. I think more of it should be straight news reporting, like, okay, this is, the government is, looking to release info on UFOs. Give it a straight report. Don't slant it one way or the other. Don't make a snide comment, or just present it objectively, factually. This is it, and let people decide. That's how I approach things, and I think less and less that's the case with journalists.
With someone with your experience, does it bother you on a personal level seeing where, say, the last 10, 15 years, or I guess we're going on 20 years now since the OJ trial and the slow speed chase of the white Bronco, where we've seen the change in journalism go from the credible to the absolutely absurd?
It bothers me very much. I've had many discussions with colleagues, with friends, with acquaintances about that very thing. And it's very disturbing, and it does not bode well for us as a society or a nation, quite frankly.
So in your mind, how do we change that? Because I can tell you this, it's not just an American problem. I notice it happening more and more up here in Canada, especially on the radio and in the newspapers, where it seems that if it's not sensationalistic, it doesn't get the following that it does, right? It's not so much on television yet, and I put that with a big exclamation point, yet.
I think that it is really very much a drive toward ratings, toward eyeballs, toward circulation, and I do see it a lot on television in that, you'll see more attention paid to a cute little puppy story than something of huge import, in say, our presidential race in America. That bothers me. Not that necessarily having a cute puppy story is bad, but when you have to have one in every half-hour network newscast, well, no, I think that is bad.
So when you're discussing things with a new journalist, say right out of college, excited, eager to get onto the floor, what do you tell them in regards to talking stories right down the middle, talking about, look, we have to stay neutral, we have to stay unbiased, because there's a lot of people who come out of school who are very eager, they want to get that story, they want to start breaking news, but it's very simple to fall into the game plan of, we're going to cover the local dog pageant rather than, covering what John Podesta is saying about ETs and UFOs.
And I'm at a small enough daily newspaper that most of our reporters are going to have to do both types of stories, some of the human interest, light news, and some of the very heavy news. And what I stress, actually what I tell new people are the three most important things of any news story are accuracy, accuracy, and accuracy. And then behind that, you be objective, you tell both sides. And I have often, as an editor, thrown stories back at reporters because they didn't tell both sides, or they spent three-fourths of it telling one side and weakly told the other side. Also, facts backing up. Okay, these people are saying this. What do the facts say? Research into, okay, does the actual record bear out what they're saying? So yeah, it's doing the homework, it's being accurate, it's asking the questions, it's filling the holes in your story.
Do you think there is room for taking the alternative news a little bit more serious in the mainstream, whether it's paranormal stories rather than just around Halloween time, whether it's UFO stories or maybe Bigfoot sightings somewhere around one of the states or provinces here in North America?
Yes, I do, and those tend to be, the little, oddities in the news type stories, the little 3-paragraph filler you see here or there, kind of tongue-in-cheek. And yeah, I really do. I think any topic deserves serious study and serious investigation.
But how do you get that from, say, the back-end filler of your newspaper up to, say, page 1, 2, or 3, where most readers are actually still paying attention?
Yeah, I'm hoping that, if Hillary comes through, if what they're saying is going to happen with the release of information takes place, that all news outlets will treat that seriously. And a smaller paper like mine, I hope they'll talk to, maybe look back, if we had people who have reported things that fall into those lines here. Something I found interesting in doing I'm also a historian, I do a lot of historic writing, and back in the, say, 1870s or so, there were a number of UFO reports right here in my area, people fishing or out in the field, and there were a number of these accounts in the newspapers. But and they seem to treat it, very fairly and very objectively. Hopefully we can do the same 140 years later.
We only have a couple minutes before we got to take our break here at the top of the hour to wrap up number 1. When you came out with your book on the paranormal, how were you treated by your fellow journalists and your editors in regards to this? Because, let's face it, as we've been saying pretty much this entire half an hour, journalists, we're fickle people. We're a fickle bunch.
I was treated very well, especially by my coworkers, but I discussed some of my experience, some of the things I've had happen at the house or in Gettysburg, and so the people kind of knew where I was coming from, and I've found that on a personal level, they're very open. The publisher of our newspaper was one of the people who edited my manuscript for me, so yeah, I was treated very well by my local colleagues, and I have also had some interviews outside the area, and I won't say I've ever been treated badly or that the stories were handled badly, but I found that I got kind of shuttled off to not the frontline writer, perhaps, when I talked to editors at publications.
We are talking with Don Allison tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He's a journalist and an author. His book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg. We're going to get into that in the next half hour here on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back after this break.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio on the Spreaker.com network.
Do you believe you've been in contact with extraterrestrials? Have you seen the Greys, the Mantids, or the Reptilians? I am Samantha Mullet, and on the second Tuesday of each month, you can listen and learn from my experiences with off-worlders on Spaced Out Radio's The ET Experience. With host Dave Scott, we'll sit down and chat about what's going on with our friends from other worlds. We'll also try to answer your questions, so please tune in on the second Tuesday of the month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio. And we give it up to you guys, all the listeners, and the live listeners usually get something special and hang out in the chat room. And we love to have you. So we'll see you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. You know where.
If you're a fan of social media, you can follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where our archives are stored, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back for hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening in to us on the SHR Media Network over on Paranormal Forum. If you're on Spreaker, you can chat with us at Spaced Out Radio Show. And if you're on Facebook, we want to thank those listening in on Forest Moon Paranormal, Euphoria Chronicles, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson is back with Spaced Out Weekend. He will have a couple of good guests. Elizabeth Anglin will be joining him as well. Spaced Out Weekend, Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. I will be back in the hot seat on Monday. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Subscribe to that to hear our archives. And our website, which will have a brand new look coming up very, very soon, is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking about the paranormal. Our guest is author Don Allison. He's a journalist out of Ohio, recently wrote a book called I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg. And we're going to get into the paranormal right about now, because if there is one place that I want to visit, Don, it's Gettysburg. I've been to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to visit friends a number of times. We've never traveled upstate to go check it out. But I think it's one of those things that, as my own imagination and my own curiosity gets me, being so haunted as Gettysburg is, I think it's really a place where anybody who believes has to go check it out. Would you agree with that?
I would highly agree with that. I have had some profound experiences there.
What, for people who don't know, or maybe people who've never been to that part of the United States, makes Gettysburg so haunted? Everybody knows it was involved in the Civil War, but I don't think people really understand the ominous tragedy that happened there over a couple weeks' time.
Yeah, it was just an incredibly horrible experience. I'm thinking around 7,000 people died or were killed outright in the battle. More died afterwards. There were more than 50,000 casualties, killed, wounded, and missing. And it, in the space of a small area. Now, granted, it's many square miles, but it's centered near, a relatively small town, Gettysburg, and just the experience of the town itself. I mean, if you can imagine, tens of thousands of dead and dying men, dead horses, laying out in the July heat, it overwhelmed the ability of anybody to deal with it. And people died horrific deaths. Is an example. One experience that just stuck out in my mind. A gentleman from a nearby town decided to travel to Gettysburg to lend a hand to help out in any way he could. As he's walking through the battlefield toward the town, he saw a man laying beside the road with his chest torn away, still alive, and you could see his heart beating in the open air. That just sears into my mind, and just is a perfect example of the absolute horrible suffering that went on there. That is at least the spiritual sense of why there's a haunting. When you get into more of the scientific aspect of it, people think that the quartz and the stone holds the energy, much like a quartz battery in a watch, and they think that contributes as well.
Would you?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, would you say that Gettysburg is probably the most haunted spot in the United States?
According to many people, yes. From my personal experience, I've been to Gettysburg many times. I've been there and had absolutely no paranormal experiences, and I've been there and had that predominate a particular visit. But I'd have to say that if there's a place more haunted, I would be interested in checking it out. I don't know what it would be.
So you being the skeptic that you are leading up to this, you go up to Gettysburg, and what happened?
Well, I had been to Gettysburg. My wife and I honeymooned there many years ago. We had no paranormal experiences whatsoever. We returned for one of our anniversaries. So this was after we had purchased our old house. We were grappling very much with trying to understand what's happening to us. And I had been watching TV and reading, and I became familiar with Mark Nesbitt's work. He is the author of the Ghosts of Gettysburg series. He's also a serious historian. And I thought, well, it'd be interesting to talk to Mark to get his take on our house. And being a journalist, I'd made arrangements to interview him so I could do a story for our paper here at home. Just, it was approaching Halloween at that time. Mark graciously agreed to meet with us. So we interview him upstairs at his Gettysburg headquarters, a living area up above his business. And he tells us about his own experiences in that building, which that part of the building was there during the battle. He's had EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon. He's heard voices, just had many different things happen. Well, he assured us that the things we had happening at our house were very run-of-the-mill, very normal. We weren't losing our minds. We were going through a very common type of thing. When we're through, I thought, well, it'd be nice to get a photo of Mark. I thought, well, I'd have my wife sit with him. I took some photos of Mark alone. My camera works fine. My wife sits in the chair beside his chair. I go to take their picture, and my camera turned off when I hit the shutter. I'm thinking I had just checked the camera out in the hotel. I didn't want to look like a fool in front of Mark Nesbitt, just meeting his acquaintance. All of a sudden, my camera's not working. I switch out the batteries. Same thing happened. Mark just starts laughing and says, that sort of thing happens here all the time. It took me at least a dozen tries to get one photo, and I just was stubborn. I kept going. I ended up getting two and in giving up. And I thought, so odd. We left, and the camera worked fine after we left that building. And I thought very little more about it than at that point. So we're in Gettysburg a couple more days. Now, this is one that really caught my attention. We had gone off to visit actually what was the Boyd's Bear store at that time. My wife collected them. It was a rainy day. We're coming back into Gettysburg. We get just to the edge of the military park, and the rain stopped. I thought, oh, cool, we can do some battlefield tramping. Well, I wanted to visit Little Round Top. I'd been there many times. It was the left flank of the Union Army. A very storied struggle took place there. We turned onto Confederate Avenue. Just as I turned, the song Sweet Home Alabama came on the radio. Thought kind of odd. For a connection, I have ancestors. My mom's from Alabama. I had many ancestors who fought in Alabama units. I did not at this time know anything of any connection to Gettysburg with my ancestors. So we drive, and just a little ways down is the Alabama Monument. This monument is located where the famous Alabama Brigade formed up for its charge on Devil's Den and Little Round Top. So here I stop. The song Sweet Home Alabama is on the radio. I get out. It's beautiful fall colors. I want to get a picture of the Alabama Monument. I'd gotten one years ago, but my camera repeated the process. I pressed the shutter, and it turned off. This is just odd, and I'm thinking I have a damn defective camera. I was getting really kind of peeved at this point. Kept hitting the shutter. Again, I got maybe two shots. Okay, I get back in the van. We drive the short distance to Little Round Top. And again, with the fall colors, I wanted to get a photo of the 20th Maine Regiment Monument. They're the unit that held the Union left flank in that very famous fight. So I'm up there. My camera checked out in between. It's working fine again. I go to take the 20th Maine Monument photo, and my camera, again, would not work. I'd press the shutter. It would turn off. The odd part was, though, I could turn and look down the hill toward where the Alabama troops approached and take any photo I wanted. I, again, kept trying, maybe got two shots of the 20th Maine. But what really confounded me is after that, every Union monument on Little Round Top that I tried to take a photo of, my camera would not work, but I could take any scenic shot that I wanted. This was just blowing my mind at that point. I have no explanation for it. Once we got off of Little Round Top out into the wheat field, the camera started working normally, and it never malfunctioned again. I owned it probably 2 or 3 years after that, gave it to my son, and he used it for a while. To this day, I have no explanation for that.
It's almost like there was some hidden trickery going on by the deceased soldiers that they didn't want you to photograph. Maybe you were going to pass those photographs off to the other side, the enemy, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's really hard to tell. But what is odd is later on, after I had some, getting into the paranormal research, I was kind of curious, and it turns out that I had many ancestors, great-great-great-uncles, and a great-great-grandfather in the Alabama Brigade that fought at Devil's Den and Little Round Top. My great-great-grandfather was captured on Little Round Top. That, unfortunately, I did not know until after my book was done. I did know that he was in the 15th Alabama regiment that attacked Little Round Top. It was almost as if my family was trying to get my attention.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden when you say that it was ironic that the song Sweet Home Alabama came on earlier on, it now makes sense. It was like your own family was trying to say, hey, we're still here. We're still living this battle on a daily basis. We're still fighting.
And I returned last spring to Gettysburg with my grandson. And this was to be a history exploration. I was not really looking at the paranormal, but after we had some experiences early on in the trip, the last night there, I resolved to try to kind of test something out. I happened to have a CD of Leonard Skinner with the song Sweet Home Alabama on it. So our last evening in Gettysburg, we went to the Alabama Monument. We both had cameras. We both took several shots. I then started playing the song Sweet Home Alabama, and then I started reading off the names of family members who were in the Alabama unit while my grandson took pictures. He shot 15 shots while I was reading off those names and the music was playing. We then turned off the music, took some more shots. None of my shots contained orbs or anything. And his shots before and after the music and the names had nothing. He took 15 shots while I read the names, and 3 of them had unexplained orbs. Now, I know orbs are very controversial, but I have been a professional photographer since I was in high school. I took all the photojournalism courses when I was in college. I've never, ever captured an orb outside of a rainstorm or snowstorm, ever, in my life, and here he gets 3 in the span of seconds, probably less than a minute. We left there. We drove the short distance to Little Round Top. We parked. I stopped and turned off the van, and this is right where the 15th Alabama, which had a great-great-great-uncle and a great-great-grandfather in the unit, right where they attacked, my grandson took 5 pictures as fast as he could press the shutter. Nothing was visible to the naked eye, but then when he showed me the photos, the first photo had at least 5 orbs, including one with a tail, like it was coming right at us. The next 4, starting in the lower left of the photo, was an orangish, yellowish, reddish mist that got larger with each successive photograph and was quite large at the end. My grandson, who had great composure through all this, that flipped him out. He said, "Grandpa, let's get out of here." For what it's worth, my nearly brand new SLR camera would not work at all at that point. And it was after that I did a little more research and found out, my great-great-grandfather was captured probably within feet or yards at the most of where we were.
Oh, goodness. That is a little bit too eerie. So
it is hard to explain that with coincidence.
So what's going on with your grandson at this time? Was this his formal introduction into the paranormal? Did he think, wow, my grandpa chases ghosts or writes about ghosts and I'm all interested in this? But what was his reaction to be there with you and to start having these experiences?
He was incredibly interested. There again, that wasn't the intent of our trip, but he has helped us work on this house. He has had his own experiences here at the house. His dad continues to be a skeptic. He's just never had an experience. But Connor, my grandson, has spent much more time here, and he's very aware that, yes, things do happen. And I haven't even gotten into the most mind-blowing thing of the Gettysburg trip. Our first night, we had 2 things happen. One was we heard footsteps in our hotel room. And I'm laying here thinking, that sounds like footsteps on the carpet. And my grandson pipes up from the other bed. "Grandpa, that sounds like a person walking." I said, "Yeah, it does." Later on, we heard the distinct boom of a cannon, complete with the echo and everything. Now, I'm a living historian. I'm very familiar with Civil War cannon. He's accompanied me to events. He's familiar with the cannon, and again, he piped up. So said, Grandpa, that sounds like a cannon. I said, yeah. Apparently that's a very common phenomenon reported around Gettysburg, hearing musket fire and phantom cannons. And I talked to the hotel clerk who told me that, yes, they get many reports of hauntings in the hotel. It's located on the battlefield proper, and it's even a stop on one of the ghost tours. So that started our trip off.
At what point did you decide, Don, that you needed to write I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg?
It was pretty soon after I got back from Gettysburg, and I don't know how we are time-wise. We actually, using a spirit box, had an absolutely incredible encounter, conversation, concert that still leaves me shaking my head. And I can get into that now, or we can wait till we have a little more time. I don't know which you'd rather do.
Well, we have about 8 minutes before we have to take a break here, so we have a lot of time. And if we have to, I would love to carry it over into the second half. So we're all good.
Well, what happened was it's our first full day in Gettysburg. We'd had our cannon and footstep experience the night before, and we're deciding what we wanted to do. We toured the battlefield, and then we'd watch the film Gettysburg to see, a depiction of what had happened at where we were just visiting. We're looking through, and as a journalist, I'd registered with their Destination Gettysburg, marketing group. So I was entitled to some visits to some different things, some experiences. One was a ghost investigation. And I showed that to Connor. What do you think? He said, yeah, it looks cool. Now I'm thinking this is just a touristy thing. I'm expecting nothing out of this. But I call up. They say, sure. They set me up with a very nice young lady by the name of Destiny Sanchez, who is a professional investigator. And they said, yeah, we'll start at 9 o'clock tonight, and we'll go to Sachs Bridge. And I'm thinking, what? Sachs Bridge, it's an old beat-up covered bridge my wife and I saw back on our honeymoon. So I want to go somewhere cool, the battlefield or a building that was there. But the guy assures me, no, you'll like this. This is a very active area. So I said, okay, we'll go. So we arrive at Sachs Bridge. It's about 9 p.m. There are quite a few cars, quite a few people there, and I'm thinking, this is going to be a circus. This is a joke, but we'll go through with it. The investigator shows us an array of equipment that we're free to use, and I thought, K2 meters. I've seen them on TV. The laser grid to detect movement, that looked pretty cool. And the spirit box intrigued me. Basically a way to get real-time EVPs. It scans radio stations. I'm sure you're very familiar with them. And sometimes you will get some real-time words coming through. That sounded intriguing to me. I'd seen them on TV, but let's try this out. I made a huge mistake in not bringing along an audio recorder or video recorder or both. I really wish I would have, but at the time, I'm not expecting anything. And this investigation starts out like I expected. We go across the bridge. There's probably 20 people in about 3 groups there, and this is no good. But we got off on the far side of the bridge from where we started, and Destiny starts explaining what took place there. And I had no clue that Sachs Bridge was really the dropping off point for the very worst of the Confederate wounded when the Confederate Army retreated at the end of the battle. The entire area surrounding Sachs Bridge was one vast field hospital. All the buildings were appropriated. People were in open air hospitals. There again, people they didn't think could survive a wagon trip, and the very worst of their wounded prisoners would have been left there. And as she is describing this, I'm starting to appreciate the area more, but we were getting nothing in the way of results. So with the spirit box, she tried laying a flashlight down, the trick to get it to turn it a little bit, to turn it on. We're getting nothing. Through the spirit box, she'd ask, is anyone here? Can you give us your name? We might get a very faint, staticky thing that didn't seem to be part of the normal static of the spirit box, but nothing we could really understand. One thing we did get, she said, can you tell us what color coat one of us is wearing? And we got a clear blue, and I did have on a blue coat. I thought, that's kind of interesting, but I'm underwhelmed at this point. We're walking back to the bridge. Destiny kind of, looked startled, and she said, did you see that? And Connor and I said, no. Well, she said she saw a black figure. It's a very common report there, but neither Connor nor I saw it. We go back across the bridge. The crowd's thinning out. We go back into the woods a ways on the other side, and I will say that I felt a very heavy presence there. And later Connor told me he felt very kind of creeped out there, and he jumped and said, did you see that? And he reported a shadow figure. I didn't see either one, but the reactions that they both gave when they saw them were pretty true to life. I don't think either one of them was faking. And I do think perhaps some wounded men drowned in that area when there was a heavy rainstorm right after the battle, people who were too weak to move out of the way. But there again, I saw nothing. We get back to the bridge. The crowd had finally dispersed, but it's now 11 o'clock, the end of our investigation. We thought, well, Destiny, we can try a couple minutes since we have the bridge to ourselves. So she starts talking, and we started getting some faint answers on the spirit box. Hard to understand, but one all of a sudden got my attention. She said, how many of you are with us? We got this very clear 7, 8, 9. All of a sudden I'm thinking, wow, I didn't expect anything like this. She starts like asking names and so forth, and like, who are you with? We're getting things we can't understand. Well, we were getting cold. It was in late March. She wanted to start the car to turn on the heater, and I thought, just out of the blue, okay, I'll ask something kind of offbeat, and trying to relate if these were Civil War soldiers, because we did get what sounded like the year 1863 to one of Destiny's questions, and that intrigued me. So I say, okay, do you like jokes? And I got a very clear, polite, yes, sir. And I thought, okay, well, music came to mind. I love the music of the period. I said, do you like music? And I got a clear answer, of course. I mean, there was even kind of that annoyed, offended sound to the voice that just floored me. And my grandson, and bless his soul, he was quick thinking. He said, can you play for us? And we got this crystal clear, absolutely, and we started hearing guitar music, not little blips like you would hear from stations coming through in a spirit box, but several notes, a good full measure more of acoustic guitar. Destiny returned as we're finishing setting this up, and her mouth, I looked up at her mouth was open. She was just flabbergasted. This went on for minutes, and when it seemed to be weakening, I just said, can you play some more? We got, yes, sir. And the music came up again. We started hearing, I thought a mandolin, Destiny thought a piano, but higher pitched strings. And blown away at this point. And finally it faded away, and I said, wow, you're good. And the voice says, thank you. And they again said, can you play some more? Yes, sir. And we heard more. This time harmonica kicked in, and Connor recognized that. That's a harmonica. And so we had this concert going on for a long time. We started talking more, asking, we asked a name, and we couldn't make out the name, but there was an on sound, like on, and Destiny kept saying, can you enunciate more clearly? And it would repeat it several times. You could even sense a strain in the voice, but we couldn't make out anything but the on in the middle. And, said, were you a soldier? Yes. And then we got the term, the word captain. Thought, wow, I mean, I'm thinking this has to be faked at this point. I'm just not believing that this really is happening. And she asked, how old are you? We got nothing. I should have waited, but I said, what unit were you in? Soon after that, we got a 20 that kind of overrode my question, and then repeated 3 more times very clearly, 20, 20, 20.
Don, on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on, and we could finish the story right after we take our final break with you of the night. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Our guest is author Don Allison. His book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, can be found on Amazon, absolutely anywhere. Check out his website as well, imetaghost.com. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
Would you like to expand your clientele? Have you ever thought of online radio advertising? Check out spacedoutradio.com to get your name out there. Our listeners support those who advertise with us, so why not give it a try? We have the most competitive advertising prices out there. Just click on the advertising tab on spacedoutradio.com and contact us today.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. We're starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I don't want to take a thing from you. I just want to feel like something real with you. I just want to fly high to another.
And welcome back to the final half hour with our guest Don Allison tonight on Spaced Out Radio. In the next hour, Corrine DeWinter and myself will be together as we will be chatting about everything paranormal, everything ufological, as we banter about to bring the final hour of Spaced Out Radio to a close right after this. I do want to thank everyone listening in on the SHR Media Network. If you're on Paranormal Forum, thank you for listening in. Taking part in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, appreciate your time, as well as if you're listening in on Facebook. At Euphoria Chronicles, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship SOR Space Travelers, good to have you with us tonight. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be with us as we talk about Spaced Out Weekend. Yes, Elizabeth Anglin will be around for the first hour to host Cosmic Passport as well. It's going to be a good weekend indeed while I go off into the wilderness right after this show to find my Zen, my Chi, and maybe a good Wi-Fi signal from one of the caves that's around here up in the mountains. It'll be a good time indeed, so make sure you tune in this weekend. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to that to hear our archives. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. It'll have a brand new look coming up very, very soon. Tonight we are talking paranormal with author Don Allison. His book, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, can be found on Amazon as well as any major bookstore. His website, imetaghost.com. We bring Don back into Spaced Out Radio now. Don, thank you so much for joining us. Right before the break, Don, you were talking about your experience at Gettysburg and what led you to writing the book. I would love it if you could continue your story.
Yes, certainly. We were on Sachs Bridge with a spirit box. We'd had quite a conversation, a kind of mini concert, if you will, from acoustic instruments. And we had gotten a clear answer of 20 when asking either the age or the unit. Unfortunately, we asked the questions too close together. We'd gotten a partial name. To kind of end our experience on the bridge, Destiny, the investigator that we were with, asked the question, were you hurt? And this still brings chills down my spine to think about it. But we received in reply the most awesome guttural male scream of total anguish, followed by a woman crying. And that just kind of sucked all the energy out of us. We just sat and looked at each other, and that pretty much ended things. Another group had come onto the other end of the bridge. They apparently had a spirit box, and they seemed to be getting answers at that point. So we left. On the way back, I'm just peppering Destiny, the investigator, with questions about what's going on. And in my mind at this point, I'm trying to figure out if somebody pulled a hoax on us. I really was. I couldn't imagine we could have a conversation like that with a spirit, with a soldier from 150-some years ago. It's like, come on. The skeptic in me was very active right then. Destiny said on a scale of 1 to 10, she thought that was about a 9.5 as far as investigations went. She said she'd never gotten music. She said the activity was absolutely incredible. She seemed in awe. Unfortunately, we hadn't recorded any of it. We got back to the hotel. My grandson and I went over it. I started writing down what happened. We talked, and once we got back to Ohio, we talked some, kind of fleshed this out. I talked to Destiny, getting her recollections. I sent her what I had compiled and had her make, her own notations. The closest thing to a recording that we could. I wish I would have recorded it, but you can't go back and redo. But on my return home, I just kept thinking about this. I couldn't get this out of my mind. Once I got back, I thought, well, I'll look into the historic record. Like, okay, either this person's age or unit was 20, and he said he was a captain. So I looked, well, did any Ohio captains die at Gettysburg? And yes, there were 7 of them who were killed or mortally wounded there. Ironically, none of them were in a unit that was 20, although there were 2 Ohio units, the 25th and 29th. Neither one of them had captains who died. There were no captains who were age 20, but most of them who were killed or mortally wounded were in their 20s. One name in particular stuck out as I researched this, Malin Briggs, 3 syllables with the on sound that we were getting repeatedly when he was asked his name. He also fit because he was mortally wounded on day 1, fell into Confederate hands as a prisoner, and expired on July 3rd. He may well have died near Sachs Bridge as a Confederate prisoner. What did we speak with Malin Briggs? I don't know. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it fit the historic record, and I find it very intriguing. After I got back, I started talking about this whole experience, spirit box. How does it work? Could this be faked? And, talking with paranormal researchers, researching online, reading about it, it appeared that no, that was not a machine that could be manipulated. But whatever happened, we were getting intelligent responses. That's when I decided to do the book. I thought people may think I've lost my mind. People may think that, gee, I've just lost my credibility. But I thought, nah, this is real, and I don't care. It deserves serious attention.
So when you put all of your findings together to write I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, were you surprised or shocked at the amount of evidence that you were able to collect? And it almost seems like some of these spirits were so willing to tell their stories to you, whether it's via ghost box or something along those lines. Were you surprised at how open they were about helping you develop this story?
Yes, I was. I almost felt I tend to be sometimes a spiritual person, and I did feel that this is where I'm supposed to be at this point in my life, that there's a purpose to all this. This just didn't happen out of the blue, so to speak. I did really, really feel guided, and yes, I was just almost in awe at really what all has happened to me when I started compiling it. Especially when I found out that my great-great-grandfather was indeed present and was captured at Little Round Top. That was a moving, revelation to me.
So when you're writing this, and I'm going to get you to throw your journalistic hat back on here for a moment, how much skepticism did you put into this? Or was it something that was just so mind-blowing that you figured, I got something here, I have to write about this, this story has to come out?
I tried to be objective, that I don't know the answers. Was I speaking with a spirit at Sachs Bridge or spirits? I don't know, but I know there was an intelligence involved. Are there ghosts in my house? I think what we perceive as ghosts, yes, there are ghosts here. What are ghosts? I don't have the answers, and I try to take that approach very much. That yes, there's something here, and part of my whole drive for doing this is that hopefully people who have more scientific expertise and knowledge than I do could maybe look further into this. I know there is a lot of research, but I almost think that it needs to bump up to have some of maybe our best and brightest scientific minds focused on this field. That's one of the things I hope to, bring about or foster through my work.
So how hard was it, or how easy was it for you to put this together? How long did it take you to put I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg together?
Very little time. I tend to be a fast writer. I tend to be a focused writer. And once I started, it just kind of I would say flew onto the page, but it flew into the computer hard drive.
No.
Yeah.
Did it change your perception, though, of what the paranormal was all about? Because for a lot of people who have experiences and write about it, there's always some sort of personal change that goes along with it, Don.
Yes, I tend to think that there is an intelligent energy in the universe, and that there's intelligent energy with personalities, intelligent individuals within this energy, so to speak. I very firmly believe that. I wish I had the wherewithal to demonstrate that beyond a shadow of a doubt to anyone, based in science, because I'm very much based in science. But I think there is definitely something there that we just don't have our heads wrapped around yet.
When you look at the story that you wrote, what did you hope to accomplish by taking these notes, listening to this evidence that you got, and then putting it into a book form?
My biggest goal was just to let the world know that I think there's something here that we need to pay attention to. I guess that kind of goes back to our earlier discussion about the journalistic world maybe taking a dim view, or at least a very incomplete view of this. Since I wrote the book, I will say that I've been amazed at how many people have come up to me and shared their stories. And when it tends to happen after I've given a talk, and when the crowd's pretty well thinned out, then people will approach me like they're almost afraid of being ridiculed. But then they'll share stories very similar to my own, things that have happened. So I hope that also that it's a resource for people to share with people who have had experiences, that they'll realize, no, A, they're not alone, B, they're not losing their mind. These are very real things.
Do you think there's still a lot more stories that need to be told out of Gettysburg? Everyone knows the history. Everyone who passes by that area seems to have some sort of paranormal experience and a story of their own. But you have seemed to capture the story from a soldier's point of view. Do you think there's a lot more books and a lot more stories out there if you continue going on?
I really do, and I haven't decided exactly what my next direction will be precisely, but I do want to delve more fully into the paranormal, and Gettysburg will be a part of that. For one thing, I think if somebody wants to really ramp up the scientific exploration of the paranormal, I think that is a great place to do it. I don't know that you can replicate a ghost in a lab, but I think you can certainly find one at Gettysburg if you look long enough.
Mm-hmm. Is it a place you want to go back to, Don, and try and maybe finish up or write a part 2 to this book?
Yes, I definitely. I've been to Gettysburg a couple of times since those experiences. I've been more a book tour type thing and less, a chance to explore. I'm going back in just a few weeks again. I did go to Sachs Bridge briefly and did get some answers. I purchased a spirit box of my own out of curiosity, and did get some odd responses at Sachs Bridge. But yeah, I'd like to just spend a few days there and do nothing but do some exploration, some ghost, hunting, if you will.
Has it turned you into a real paranormal investigator? Would you consider yourself a paranormal investigator now, or a paranormal journalist, or is this just that itch you need to scratch, Don, in order to kind of complete your mission that you have been put on by writing this story, I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg?
I will say that this is definitely a part of what I do professionally now. I would not call myself an investigator, although I want to do more of that. I mean, I've really only scratched the surface of being an investigator. I'm still very interested in Civil War history. I've done straight history books. I plan on doing more, but but because that seems to be my niche, so to speak, I think my paranormal writings will probably tie in with the Civil War and Gettysburg and maybe other Civil War sites as well.
It's kind of a different take on history, isn't it? Because we have the facts that have been written down on why it happened, how it happened, what caused the North versus the South. We know that part. But you're almost taking it to a whole new level by using the paranormal and your journalistic experience by bringing the story of the soldiers back. And when you're able to report on that, and they are giving you accurate information in your own personal investigation using Ghostbox and other devices of equipment, it adds a whole new dynamic to what we are doing. And there aren't a lot of people who have actually been able to capture what you have captured.
No, and really I'm using the same approach I do with what you might call straight history. I look, okay, this is what's commonly known, and then I look at the primary sources. I look at the historical record. Okay, this battle took place. Who was killed? Who was wounded? What happened? What are the people who are there saying? I think maybe that's something often missing in paranormal research. You see some of it, but I think it has a place in any paranormal research. What is the history of this place? What are verified facts, and how do they fit with what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Do you see other people kind of maybe jumping on the bandwagon doing what you are doing? Because it is a little bit different. And I know from a media standpoint, we all try to find our own little niche on what we are doing. I know, for example, with this show, we try and focus more on the experiencer side of things rather than the hardcore scientific or governmental research that a lot of investigators are doing. Do you see your niche being almost copycatted in regards to this because the evidence you are getting and the tales you are being able to tell are really rare?
I would be highly flattered if people would copycat me. I think that it is maybe another, and I'm trying to think of the right word, maybe just another dimension to research, to paranormal research, that I think just lends that much more evidence. I know they're the hardcore skeptic scientists that say, well, ghost existence has never been proven, and I get that, and I can appreciate what they're saying, but then I'm saying, well, then maybe we need to ramp up our research, maybe we need to look at a little different way, and if what I'm doing can help lend some credence, can lend some support, can lend some direction, I'm thrilled with that.
Where would you like to see the side of journalism and paranormal grow? In which direction do you think it has to go?
I would love to see things be more objective. And I do think that maybe the plethora of ghost shows on TV has opened people's eyes. My reception, even in the field among journalists, has been generally good. I've not had anybody blow me off. I've had a little bit of, well, yeah, I can tell they don't think I'm worth maybe the top writer, but we have a regional, public television, American public television show that I was featured on, an hour-long show that looks at hard news events in our area, and I was their guest for one of the shows. I was just very flattered and very pleased that they were that open-minded, and I was treated very fairly, very openly. And as a matter of fact, one of the guys on one of the assistant directors talked with me for about a half hour after the show about his own experience. So I think maybe there's more openness than there used to be, but we still have a ways to go.
When you go for an investigation like you did with Gettysburg, were you concerned at all about bringing any spirits home with you? Because I do know a lot of paranormal investigators, they try and leave the spirits where they are, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through cleansing themselves with sage or anything like that. Did you go that far, or did you just try and take it on a very professional level with your notes, your recordings, and gather it from there?
At the time, I didn't really think about that. I have thought about it since. One thing I will say with our house, I've had many folks, some groups, ghost investigating groups wanting to come here and investigate, and my wife and I both feel like we don't want to stir things up. We have a very comfortable coexistence here. They make themselves known regularly. The steps I talked about near the beginning of the show, we'll hear them in our bedroom as we sleep, going on around us, but they don't hurt anything. We don't want to ramp things up, so we're very careful there.
Mm-hmm. Did activity in your own personal home as you started investigating more start to increase, or did it remain the same?
It tended to be more until we moved in, and when we first moved in, there was a fairly high level, but it has since, I won't say subsided, but we'll go weeks with nothing, and then maybe we'll have a few things happen. I have a touchscreen computer here in my office that I do not leave on because something opens files. It is the strangest thing. At first it was random. Now it tends to get into a folder and start opening things, including the backup file to the I Met a Ghost book and some of the photos. That one kind of intrigued me.
It's just the story that won't end. That's what it seems like.
It is. It really is. We had, I thought I had the book done. I'd finished it the day before, and we had two gentlemen bring in a new clothes washer at the house. One gentleman he was freaked out, just totally freaked out, saw, ironically, a little girl at the top of the stairs looking at him. She'd walked out from the middle bedroom where we tend to hear her footsteps, looked at him, and walked back into the bedroom. He was about ready to run. This poor guy was just almost a basket case. And he described this little girl in detail, brown curly hair, about 6 or 8 years old. She had on a white dress, and he described it. It sounded like an 1800s play or sleep dress. And then he added, it was dirty. I found that intriguing because in my mind's eye, I'd always pictured a little girl's footsteps.
No, absolutely. And you know what? It's one of those things where, the experiences, the more you get into it, they always seem to encroach on other people as well who enter your territory or your domain. We have found that as well, around our property and around people who we associate with. So do you think you've maybe opened up a door, or you've become a conduit to the spiritual world without even knowing?
Yeah, I really don't know. Yeah, we have had countless people. We had some break-in problems before we moved in. Our sheriff's department was investigating the place. Deputies, one of the detectives confided in me. They were having all sorts of weird experiences. When we were working here, like staying overnight, I'd call to let them know so they wouldn't have to stop in on patrol. And the dispatcher would say, "Oh, the haunted house."
Oh, no.
This is all coming from them, not from us. So.
Well, how does that make you feel?
Vindicated, I guess, to a degree, or, verification. That, the other people see it too. Many other people have experienced it.
So when you go back on things, when is book number 2 coming out about the paranormal here? Because you seem to be on quite a roll.
I've been actually thinking quite a bit about what that will be. Probably the biggest limit right now is on my time. I'm still very heavily involved in promoting the current one, so I'm thinking probably later this year. Maybe late this year is when I'll start working on it.
Don, we only have about 90 seconds left with you tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg. Where can people find it? How easily is it to get a hold of you? And maybe if they even want an autographed copy, how do they go about that?
If they would like an autographed copy, go to www.imetaghost.com, order the book, and then go to the contact tab and just send a message that they would like a signed copy. If they'd like it personalized, they can indicate the information right there. I'd be happy to provide them one.
And for sale, do they just go online to get it?
You can get it there. It's at Amazon, major bookstores that have it available, so it should be pretty easy to find.
Wonderful. I want to say thank you once again for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight, Don. I hope we get to do it again. And when you get that next book written, I want to bring you back on to see what your new findings are, because I think that'll be absolutely interesting.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed myself. Thanks for having me on.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. And welcome back to Spaced Out Radio Tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much if you're listening in on the SHR Media Network. Over on Paranormal Forum, we have a packed house in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, including Vesna, all the way from Croatia. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Vesna, and the rest of the crew. Thanks for tuning in if you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, like I said, and over on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Forest Moon Paranormal, and the SOR Space Travelers. Good to have you with us in our flagship chat room for Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson is back in the hot seat in the cabin. My bag is packed. I'm heading out into the wilderness, so that way I can find my Zen, my Chi, and maybe a good Wi-Fi signal to pick up Spaced Out Weekend with Elizabeth Anglin and James Tyson tomorrow and Sunday. I'm back in the hot seat on Monday night, where we're going to talk paranormal with members of Chronicles of the Unknown. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Subscribe to that to listen to our archives. And our website, which is almost complete. In fact, I think we're going to fire it up for Monday, is spacedoutradio.com. SOR Space Travelers, get ready, because we're about to launch. Final hour of the show tonight, we bring in purpleplates.com, Supernatural Radio's Corrine DeWinter. Corrine, thank you so much for joining us in the final hour of the show, as you normally do.
Sure. You're welcome.
You're sounding very chipper for a Friday night.
Well, that's good. That's a change.
you know, I do have to apologize to our audience here, because very rarely do I actually record someone for this show. I'm going to say maybe 1 out of every 70, 80 shows that we do is actually recorded. I much prefer the live, and the audio was not up to par, in my opinion, for anything, and I do apologize for that. It's because I used a different computer than I normally do for my recordings. I tried to cut out a step, and I didn't want to transfer my audio from computer to computer, and you know what? It didn't work. And I'm a little cranky about that. I got a case of the crankies right now. I really do. So I do want to apologize, especially to Don Allison, because I think the interview was absolutely awesome. And, you know, it's just one of those things. Sometimes in radio, you know what, there are times where I have actually played recordings, because it does happen. Say you get someone on the East Coast or further, or maybe in Europe, who wants to be on the show. Well, they're not going to be, a lot of people, depending on age, don't want to be on that early in the morning and or stay up that late. So sometimes you have to, you know, finagle your way, little radio trick, and record. And even when I am recorded, I never like it. I don't even know what to do while it's on. I really don't. But it's one of those things that happens, and I apologize for the audio tonight. It wasn't up to SOR standards, but that wasn't the interview. That was 100% on me. So, Corrine?
Yes.
How have you been? You ready to have a good weekend?
Yeah, I am. I'm actually going to a show tomorrow night, and then I'm going to a Renaissance fair on Sunday.
Are you dressing up for the Renaissance fair?
Of course, I always do. I mean, half the fun is dressing up and playing that part, you know.
Have you picked out your corset?
I have it all ready.
Excellent.
Yes. And I'm gonna pick some roses to put in my hair.
Well, I hope we get a photo. I hope we get a photo or two.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I just love those fairs. Have you ever been to one?
You know what? No, I haven't. It doesn't really interest me to be there, but I'll tell you, a few years ago, my family and I, we were out geocaching, and we went to this one park, and we heard all this noise, and we came over this hill, and there was a giant Renaissance fair going on, and they even had those giant launchers that they used to, toss boulders with. They even had a couple of those there. And It was a big medieval warrior, knights everywhere, horses with armor. It was looking pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. But what gave it away was the campsite. Like here you have this medieval thing going on, people eating large turkey legs and everything like that by hand and drinking swill. And in the meantime, here's a bunch of tents, campers, and trailers lined up all around the outside of it. So for me, it was just interesting to say the least. But you know what? For people who have fun with it, I give them all the grades because everybody's got to find something to have fun with. So I hope you have just a fantastic time with that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So Corrine, what I want to get into with you tonight, not into you, but into with you, that came out wrong, is Don Allison during the interview. The one thing I really admired about him was that he is a journalist. And, of course, with me being a former journalist, when I get a journalist on the air, it's a nice, easy conversation. And when we started talking about the role in the media when it comes to the alternatives. Now, I'm not talking about all the fringe media shows like this one, like yours, Supernatural Radio, or the thousands of others that are out there on specific topics, whether it's UFOs, paranormal, cryptids like Bigfoot or Dogman. We've had a lot of people on here with their own shows. I'm staying away from that. I'm talking mainstream media tonight. In your opinion, do you think the mainstream media is at fault, and we'll say it at fault, for not taking these types of stories very seriously?
Yes, I do. As we dabbled a little bit into this last night as well, I think that they are very scared. Even if they believe in something, they're very scared to lose their cool, to lose their perhaps what they consider their integrity. They don't even have any integrity as far as I'm concerned, most of them. But they don't want to cross that line. They don't want to take any chances. So yeah, I do believe it.
Well, it's a hot topic button right now if you look inside the field of ufology and disclosure, and we'll get into that probably at the bottom of the hour after the break. But one of the things that I'm very interested in is we see all of these networks, these, high channel networks, as I like to call them, like Sci-Fi or History Channel, Discovery. They really blew the lid off of the paranormal field. Hell, right behind me is Glenn Ferguson in my studio. Him and his wife have come up to Spaced Out Radio Land here in the boonies for the weekend because he wants to go check out the Zen and Chi that I'm going to be searching for after this show. And Glenn is got a Canadian pilot out called Chronicles of the Unknown. And in talking with him and talking with other people in regards to the way the media and the television channels and the newspapers and radio stations handle these topics, the one thing that I think the mainstream media does that really doesn't impress me is there's always after every story, whether it's paranormal, whether it's UFO or Bigfoot, we always have to start off the story with the Twilight Zone theme song or the X-Files theme song or Star Trek or something along those lines. And then at the end of each report, if it's on television or radio, there always has to be some snide remark that totally is baseless towards the conversation. And it, to me, as a former journalist, it really ruins the story. Because your job as a journalist is to report the news. If somebody has called up a radio station or called up a television station saying, look, I've got Bigfoot prints in my backyard. He was eating from my apple tree. But at the end, we have to have, I guess there's gorillas running around the lower local forest. You know what I'm saying? There's always that snide comment. When you hear something like that, what do you, as a listener or a viewer, feel when you hear that?
Insulted, quite frankly, insulted. God forbid they open their minds, right? Mm-hmm. Or, you're right. They've always going to make a snide comment. They make a joke about it, and now all the other newscasters laugh along. And it's like, really? Okay, so do we consider their reaction with those type of things to be in direct opposition to their reaction to mass murders, mm-hmm. And slayings? Okay, because they're solemn. They're playing up the sorrow for the situation. And really, can we believe anything they say? You know what I mean? They're just full of crap.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you. And, I realize journalists are fickle, okay? They're not open-minded people. And the one thing that journalists don't like is their time being wasted on a story. They don't like being put on a Scooby-Doo type investigation for a story. It is very difficult because you have to understand the way a newsroom works, which I'm going to say 90% of the people out there don't know. The phones are always ringing. Yes, it's their job to investigate every phone call because you never know when that big story is coming. All right? And the reason why they're a little fickle is because, I'll give you an example. When I was a journalism student, I did a practicum for 6 weeks doing research at one of the local television stations in Vancouver. And this is just an example. I had this guy call up to the research desk, says, hey, I need you to send a camera down to whatever the intersection was. I said, why? He goes, something's about to come down. I need you to bring a camera. And I'm like, well, you have to give me information. Well, I'll give you information when you get here. Well, I'm not sending a camera crew if you're not giving me any information. Well, it's going to be good. You need to send a camera down. I don't understand why this is being so difficult. I said, you need to provide me some sort of story here. We just don't send cameras out just because you say send a camera down. And this conversation went on for about 7-8 minutes before I finally said thank you for your time, and I hung up the phone. So it's things like that that affect the newsroom on a daily basis, and it makes people on that end a little jaded. So I'll defend them there. But when it comes to reporting, whether you're on camera, whether you are on the radio, it's supposed to be, they consider these stories filler. So if you have an extra 60 seconds at the back end of a cast, whether it's radio, whether it's television, you quickly squeeze it in. And that's where these comments come from. But I agree with you. Here are people that are freaked out, whether it's ghost stories, whether it's UFOs or anything, and they're not being taken seriously. So let me ask you this then. What do you think the mainstream media's responsibility should be to the fringe topics that we discuss on a nightly basis?
That's an interesting question. Well, is it not their responsibility to report facts and the truth? Is there any, let me ask you this, Dave, you being a former reporter, what is the protocol with that? If you guys know, if a reporter knows that something's bullshit, are you aren't you supposed to say, no, we're not going to do this? I mean, what is the protocol with that? Is it the truth and nothing but the truth? Methinks not, because I don't hear the truth coming off the news. I hear like manipulated stories. They're bent, they're twisted, the stories. Do they have a responsibility to have integrity? Absolutely. But they don't, and they don't care.
And you know what? You're right. They don't care, because by the time that story has gone through, in their minds, they've told us about the news of the day. Okay? And whether it's political, whether it's local, whether it's the murders of the night, whether it's, somebody getting screwed over at the welfare office, those are the stories, if it bleeds, it leads type of story. So when you get somebody filming something in the sky, and with the acquisition of CGI, you have to be a little bit more diligent. However, I know when meteors have come over and it's lit up the sky, the phones in the newsroom would go crazy. Like, we're talking 100 calls in a matter of minutes. And immediately you make some phone calls, but if it's a UFO that people are seeing, then we end up, with a situation where you call the local airport or military base. Do you have any aircraft in the sky? No, we don't. Or yes, we do. That's what should happen. You should call your local, if you have, a space observatory in town, call that. The reporter should call the local airports. Do you have any planes in the sky? But they're not.
Right.
If you get one call, I'll tell you an example. I called my former newsroom one night after seeing an orb fly over my town. And this orb did some weird things. There were 4 of us who saw it from my patio. So I called up my old newsroom, and a guy I used to work with answered the phone. And I said, hey, his name is John. And I said, hey, John. And I explained who I was. And he's like, hey, man, how you doing? I said, good. I said, I got a weird question for you, man. Has anybody reported any weird lights over my town tonight? And he goes, no. What'd you see? I said, dude, we saw this UFO. Was white bald or orb of a UFO that was flying over. And it was doing some weird stuff. And all of a sudden it just disappeared. And I'm wondering if you got any calls on that. And you can hear him go, are you sure you aren't drinking, Dave?
Oh, my God.
Right? And I'm like, dude, why am I going to waste your time? I said, I'm assuming nobody's called. He goes, nope, haven't heard a thing, man. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, take care. I'll talk to you soon. Right? And I hung up. And that's the last time I ever called my former newsroom about absolutely anything. But that's the reaction. And I was a respected reporter there. This is one of my former colleagues.
Right.
Blowing me off on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can only call so much before you get a little hesitant. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I can see where people will be a little jaded with the media, because the media doesn't even treat them with respect.
Right.
Do you think oh, please go ahead.
Okay, so Eric Cooper on the Facebook chat was saying that he thought that magicians or light workers or, people of that ilk should get together to fight the whole, darkness, or, for lack of a better word right now, of what is going on in the world right now. So, and my response to that is much like the news media. So how could, they don't have open minds. A lot of the population don't have open minds. How are we going to get together and change things? Is it ever going to be possible? When you get laughed at for pointing out a UFO, when you get doubted because, you believe this or that or the other thing, how are we ever as a country, as a world, ever going to get together and fight anything? We're so divided in so many ways. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. And we're going to continue this conversation right after our commercial break here at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to play a little bit of audio from a press conference, and we'll see if you recognize it on the other side, because I think this is a glaring example of what happens when the media and politicians get involved on the UFO talk. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, joined by Corrine DeWinter from PurplePlates.com. We'll be right back after this.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and download our archives for free. And don't forget to get your Space Travelers membership today. Now, back to tonight's show. Icon. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, rounding out the week. Before Uncle Jimbo James Tyson takes over the cabin in Spaced Out Radio land, Uncle Jimbo's cabin will be vacant for me as Jim moves in. I've got my bags packed, heading off into the wilderness to make sure that I can find my Zen, my Chi, and maybe do some meditation. All while looking for a good Wi-Fi signal to listen to Spaced Out Weekend Saturday and Sunday night starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Hey, thanks so much if you tuned in on the SHR Media Network, over on Paranormal Forum, in the Packed House, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, and on Facebook at Forest Moon Paranormal, Euphoria Chronicles, and the SOR Space Travelers, our flagship chat room for this show. Appreciate you tuning in. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. And on Instagram, we can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. And our website, spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking about the role of the media with the alternative stories when it comes to UFOs, paranormal, Bigfoot, anything to do with the alternative that they really don't like to cover. I don't think it's because they don't like to cover it. I think it's because they don't know how to cover it. I'm joined by Corrine DeWinter from purpleplates.com and Supernatural Radio. Corrine, thank you so much. Do you think it's more that they don't know how to cover it?
Indeed, I do. Yes, they don't know how to cover it. People don't even know who they are themselves. Not to get all freaking, philosophical here, but people don't know how to handle a lot of things, including their own lives. How are they going to handle a story that they've never heard before, that's out of their realm, that's not of their belief system? I mean, they don't know how to handle it.
I was going to play the audio from Fylth Symington, the former governor of Arizona, who had come out on a press conference in 1997, a few days after the Phoenix Lights had happened on March 13th, 1997. And here he had an opportunity to do something special. And instead, what he does is he walks someone in an alien gray costume with their hands in handcuffs, in a silver outfit, and the media and everybody gets roaring. He later recanted his statement, saying that he did see the Phoenix Lights, that there is a cover-up, and it became a very large story, even though I still think it was swept under the rug when he finally came out of the closet, so to speak, to say that, these UFOs weren't really there, even though he had seen them above his own hometown city. I was going to play it, but because all of our archives end up on YouTube, and we don't have written consent from the CNN story that I was going to run, I cannot do that legally, because this episode just won't make it there. So, if you recall, he basically had the alien giving up and did a press conference with that. When you see something like that, and you're basically slapping every citizen who saw the Phoenix Lights in the face, which is exactly what it is, does it start from the government side, or do you think the media dropped the ball on that one?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, so basically, he had aliens handcuffed, fake aliens handcuffed, and made a big joke out of it.
That's pretty much exactly what happened.
But then later, he said, "Indeed, I did see the lights, and you know, there's a lot more here than people
Exactly.
realize."
Now, I think he personally was told to shut up. He was told, I believe, in his authoritative power, to keep quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where I don't believe, much like with the John Podesta disclosure tweets, how do you not, as a reporter, and yes, we're going back almost 20 years now, but how, as a reporter, do you not all of a sudden keep, doing what your citizens need you to do, which is report the news?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Sorry, but the reporter's job should have been saying, why are you saying this, Mr. Governor? We have thousands of citizens who saw these lights. We got dozens of videos. And remember, not everybody had an iPhone back then. They weren't even invented. Most people didn't even have a cell phone in 1997. They had the big VHS tape recorders. You remember those?
Yes.
And that's what they were filming on. And yet, once again, the ball got dropped. And I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I get it. I really get it, because the ball is dropped on many issues, not only the Phoenix Lights in this case, or alien issues that get dropped all the time. I mean, Dave, it's no surprise. No surprise that no one said, "What are you talking about, Mayor?" I mean, really, where is the truth here? It's I mean, this is the way the world is now. You know what I mean, Dave? It's like no one's going to confront anybody, because it's all this big ball of, excuse my language, bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's covering for everyone else. No one wants to step out and tell the truth. And when you do, you're screwed. You're laughed at. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So it comes back to the point, and we're not going to solve the world's problems tonight, but it comes back to the point, what do we believe is the role of the media when it comes to these stories? We see it on paranormal TV shows where the ratings seem to be more important than the actual evidence. And, all you have to do is troll Facebook for a little while and see how many of these paranormal groups are creating pilots for television networks. It seems to have calmed down, but when we first fired up this show, it seemed like every paranormal group I talked to had a television pilot, contract signed. Mm-hmm. And you look at it, okay, now we've gone from paranormal to how many different Bigfoot shows are there?
Right.
From finding Bigfoot to now killing Bigfoot, where they brought in retired military snipers going into the field and basically saying, we're going to hunt you down.
Oh, my God.
It's ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous.
And what does that do for the people who have been researching this for decades? It puts all the science behind it way out to lunch, way out of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Then we come up with terms, these silly terms, that these anonyms that we come up with, like Squatch, and which I absolutely hate. Cannot stand that word. I don't know why. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. And we downplay the reality of what people are saying. We dumb people down.
Oh, constantly being dumbed down. And like Chris just said in the chat room here on SOR, the underlying issue is who controls the mainstream media. Same people that control a lot of other things, I bet, a lot of other things. And this is why I would love sometime, Dave, to really get into conspiracy theories. Because I believe a lot of, so-called conspiracies are actually reality. Not all of them, of course, not all of them. But, who does control the mainstream media? What do you think?
You know what? You bring up a very good point. And during this election process, we've seen two major conspiracies come true. On the Democratic side, and even on the Republican side, down in your area, below the 49th parallel for me, we saw Bernie Sanders literally take the majority of the votes, but lose on these so-called superdelegates.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump, love him or hate him, you saw him expose what was happening in the Republican Party, and then good old Mittens Romney. I still can't believe somebody would name their child Mittens. Okay.
Wait a minute, that's his first name?
I have no idea, but it makes a good story. I'm being a sensational journalist.
Okay.
Right? My sensationalism is up. But when you get Mittens there, publicly stating that we are going, as a party, going to thwart the people's choice of Donald Trump. And for years, conspiracy theorists have been saying the vote is rigged. The vote is rigged. Well, guess what?
Totally. Yeah.
It was proven on both sides of the ledger.
Yeah.
For years, people were calling Jesse Ventura a crackpot on this. And what did he do? He threw his hands up in the air and said, I told you so.
Yeah.
Right? And finally, the mainstream media caught on. The other conspiracy was the disclosure of UFOs. Okay? All of a sudden, Hillary Clinton is talking about it. John Podesta leaves Obama's White House to help Hillary on an agreement that she discloses, and nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another one. And
right.
yet here are all of us conspiracy theorists, and face it, if you're in this field, there is one or two conspiracies that you are going to agree with, whether you like it or not. And what they will absolutely say is these media will not say the conspiracy theorists were right. And we were.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I love having a guy. I got to get him back on. I'm going to try and get him back on in August. James Fetzer. He's been on. And if you've never seen James Fetzer speak before, what he has learned in regards to 9/11, Sandy Hook, JFK, the Boston bombings, and what he has learned about crisis actors and false flag events is phenomenal. Now,
I love that.
But I will say this. It did piss me off after we see what happened in Orlando, that within 10 minutes everybody on social media is yelling false flag. Like, we don't know. Let's get our facts straight first. I'm not even going to touch that one just yet because it's so fresh.
Right.
But his work in regards to the Boston bombing was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And the one thing that stuck out for me was he mentioned in one of these videos that I watched about him, because I'm just enamored with his research. He mentioned that one of the brothers who was charged with murder, the one who's still alive, was supposedly, they show on video him carrying a silver backpack. Yet the backpack and his brother had a different colored backpack on as well. Yet the backpack that exploded that was supposed to be theirs was a black backpack. And there's video evidence of both brothers, and neither of them are carrying a black backpack. How does that happen?
Yeah, I'd have to know more about. I mean, I'd like to hear more about that.
You know what? All you have to do, Corrine, is go on YouTube, type in James Fetzer spelled Fetzer, Boston bombing, and it's incredible. You know, he's outspoken that nothing happened at Sandy Hook. You know, that one, being a father of young children, that one I'm a little bit more sensitive to. I'm not sure about that one because I wasn't
very
there.
Interesting. That's very interesting, Dave.
Absolutely. Or how about the missile video that has all of a sudden come out on, social media recently that shows it was a missile that hit the Pentagon, not a airplane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 9/11 is all, I mean, that's just a big ball of shit there. You know what I mean? I'm sorry to swear. But I mean, come on. I can't believe there's still people in America that believe that 9/11 was, first of all, an attack that we didn't know about. And second of all, that it was everything that the news told us it was. And I say, forgive me, are you a friggin' idiot or what?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? The piece of evidence, if you need any, in my opinion, if you need any confirmation as to whether or not 9/11 was an inside job or a partial inside job, because let's face it, there were people who were murdered on that day. Close to 3,000 people were murdered that day. We're not taking anything away from that solemn loss of life, because that was a horrible tragedy. It was our generation's JFK. Mm-hmm. But I will say this: if anybody has any question, please tell me this. And if anybody ever argues with any of our listeners out there, if you believe 9/11 was an inside job, that's up to you. If you believe it was straight, that was up to you. But the only explanation from these people who say that the conspiracy theorists are full of crap, answer me this question. Why did the BBC feed get cut off when they were reporting that Building 7 had fell 25 minutes before, and their live feed was showing downtown Manhattan with Building 7 right there standing?
Yeah.
CNN did the exact same thing. Building 7, we're getting reports Building 7 has fallen, and in their background photo, Building 7 is still there. This has nothing to do with the towers. This has nothing to do with there not being any plane wreckage at Shanksville. This has nothing to do with what or what didn't hit the Pentagon. All I'm saying is, if you try and look at Building 7, there's only 3 buildings in history that have collapsed due to an airplane accident, and there's only 1 building in history that has collapsed, a steel-structured building, that has collapsed due to fire.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those in history collapsed on September 11th.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget the was it $3 trillion that disappeared?
Absolutely. And how coincidental could it be that where they were doing that investigation in the Pentagon was exactly where the plane hit?
Mm-hmm.
Is that coincidence?
No.
But
when we see George Bush reading, what was the book, the children's book he was reading at that school? The goat? Something about the goat, something. Anyways, whatever. So we see the footage of Bush hearing about what just happened. An associate comes and whispers in his ear. He looks ahead blankly with shark eyes, like he always has. And he continues reading the book. Get the hell out of here. You know what I mean? Upside down.
Well, you know what? We're never going to know the role of George Bush. We're never going to know the role of Dick Cheney. We're never going to know the role of Donald Rumsfeld. Let's face it. Let's just be honest with that. And there's no point in even wasting the oxygen on that because, I think that's where people who are listening to this show probably on a nightly basis may hit the little red button and say, we better go have a talk with Dave. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to change that.
So you are the media, Dave. Are you reporting the truth or are you editing it?
There's you have to report the truth, but it's how you report it. It's how you report it.
Because I'm telling you right now that the Bush family, you can't look past what they have done. It's a long, dark history.
And you see, as being Canadian, that's something I would never know.
You will know. And I would love for you to do a show on that because there's, oh my God, it's incredible.
I will tell you this. There are this is what I was told privately from someone who has been doing these shows for a long time. Never on the mainstream channels, okay, much on the fringe like we do. And I was forewarned about this. And it was, be very careful with JFK, be very careful with 9/11. Because if you ruffle the feathers, and even if you say something on a whim, they will come get you. And let's face it, for me, if they did that, the downside is I probably get stopped at the border taking my family to Disneyland or going on one of my many vacations to Las Vegas because I like it there, and get turned around at the border. Now I'm on a watch list. And for a person like myself who wants to report it, I have to remember that it's not just me that will suffer the consequences, it's my wife and children.
Right.
So you have to walk a very fine line in regards to what you're covering and how you are covering it when it comes to those subjects. It's funny because, according to James Fetzer, those two topics comparatively to, say, the Boston bombing or the moon landing, whether or not that's true, and I still think it's true that we were on the moon. I can't be convinced of that, of anything different on that. We still have to be careful, Corrine. In the end, because, hey, I like going to the USA. I love your country. I have a lot of friends there. And be damned if I'm going to be able to or have to be forced to miss the SOR meetup that we're going to plan in Las Vegas because I can't get around the border because Corrine told me I wasn't going too in-depth. If I lose that opportunity, Corrine, because of you, there is no way in hell we're going to have an SOR party in Vegas without me there. I'm telling you that right now.
Dave, do you see where everybody thinks that way? It's like, I don't want to cut my nose off to spite my face. You know that old saying. It's like no one wants to speak because they don't want to put their ass on the line. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. I understand.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Okay, but let's flip the sides now. The sensationalism in the media, led by Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
How many people is he duping with his sensationalism on what is happening out there? And I think Alex Jones started off on the right foot, where I lost a lot of respect for Alex Jones. And if he ever called me up on it, I would tell him this point blank. When you're going on doing your live breaking news hits, I know who won the Super Bowl, or I know InfoWars knows who has won the $1.3 billion Powerball, and then you come out on the Super Bowl and say, it's the owners. all you're doing is sensationalizing a story that it is rigged, the game is rigged, when it's not. Or all you're doing is sensationalizing the Powerball that it's rigged when it's not. People are scared, and when we have people like that sensationalizing on one end, and then you have the media on the mainstream on the other side that is not covering the story on the other end, it's the people that are caught in the middle. People like you, people like me, people like our listeners who are caught in the middle, and their voice, which is supposed to be the journalist's job, is not being done properly.
Right.
That's sad.
Now, Alex Jones, that's a really interesting topic as far as I'm concerned, because there's been many reports that he is actually the person that we rail against, and he's part of the whole, media bullshit sector. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. But there's just so many interesting things to check into and to, investigate.
Mm-hmm. How do we do it?
You're doing a good job so far getting all these people on that do investigations, He's done a lot of good over the years, Chris. Has he really? Has he really done good? I don't know that.
I'm reading Chris's comments in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He's saying, whatever his flaws, and he has many, Alex has done a lot of good over the years. I'm not a fan of his. I understand where Chris is coming from with this, okay? But what I'm going to say here, because I have the journalism background, and I'm going to play that card here for a moment. The job of a journalist is not to sensationalize. The job of a journalist is not to pick sides in an election like CNN does or like Fox News does. Okay? Yes, you can have shows like Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or whoever you want. That's what they get paid to do as analysts for one side or the other. Or that little twerp who wears the bow tie. I don't even recall his name. Who looks like he got beat up in school a lot. But what I'm saying is, if you are a journalist like Alex Jones says he is, or like CNN says they are, your job in school, you're taught in broadcasting school or journalism school to write down the middle. When I went to journalism school, I remember our instructors, they were all trained by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC. What they stated was this: you do not take a donation, you do not even take a t-shirt, a free meal, anything from anybody in your field. Because the minute you do, you show a bias, and your job as a reporter / journalist is to remain down the middle. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I saw my paycheck and I realized that working in sports, I could get a few free rounds of golf, I took advantage of that. Sure as hell I did. Right? I'll admit that.
Yeah.
I wasn't perfect. But when it came to reporting, I can tell you this. There was a major hockey incident in Vancouver involving a player named Todd Bertuzzi, who was charged with assault after breaking a player's neck named Steve Moore. I was at that game. Okay. And when his suspension from the NHL was over, he knew that I was a reporter that he could trust. He never talked to me, but if he wanted a line of questioning changed, all he had to do was look at me, and I got the sign. Change the line of questioning, please. And you know what? When I needed something, he gave it to me. Mm-hmm. It was a fair trade. A trade of respect. A trade that I'm doing my job down the middle.
Right.
And that's the job of the reporter. And that is what each and every one of you out there should be asking of your media. When are you going to call it down the middle? Your job is to report the news. It's not about choosing sides. And that's the issue. That's the issue.
Right.
Corrine,
Right.
I'm going to give you the final comment for tonight.
I think the media is mostly manipulated and just totally prejudiced against things, and we can't believe the media. This is why, you guys, we got to research things ourselves. We got to find out the truth ourselves. We're not going to hear it on the news. Never are you going to hear the truth on the news. So let's always be curious and delve into these things on our own time, in our own way, find out the truth. And it matters. You matter. We can change the world. We just have to get together on this. And so open your mind and learn. Just keep learning.
Very excellent indeed. On that note, I'm going to fire up the Bumblefoot. That was a quick hour.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's how we roll around here. There he is. Sad part is you can't even hear him, Corrine. We got to make sure that we get our music master, our guitar hero, our guitar guru, our guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot THAL. The legend of Bumblefoot continues here on SOR. Corrine, thank you so much for being beautiful. Thank you for coming in tonight. I love it when we do this final hour together.
Yes.
It's a perfect way to end the night for me.
Good.
Yeah, you're just that cool, man. I give you a thumbs up. You get a thumbs up. You know what? If you saw me right now, I'm giving you 2 thumbs up. 2. Uncle Jimbo James Tyson is in here for Space Out Weekend Saturday and Sunday. I'm leaving the cabin here momentarily. Corrine, I'm walking over to your house. You got to fly me home, though. You have to fly me home. I'm on my way. Bag is packed. I'm going to find a moose so that way I can jump on its back and ride it all the way to Massachusetts. Because that's what we Canadians do. We're damn tough that way. We're not going to be intimidated by a moose. Hell with that. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. And I'm telling you right now, I think Monday's our launch date for the new website. It is sexy. I was looking at it tonight. It is sexy. We don't know what Corrine's wearing in her picture, but that's okay. It's still going to look very, very good. Thank you to all our listeners on the SHR Media Network, Paranormal Forum, Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, and Euphoria Chronicles, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship SOR Space Travelers for tuning in this week. Much love. We'll see you Monday. Good night, Corrine.
Good night, Dave. Thank you.
Our man, myth, and music legend, Bumblefoot, taking us out. Little brother is watching. Enjoy it. Check him out on our website. Here we go. We're rocking it out right now. Get the air guitars up.